Oh, dude.
It's going to be a good one.
So, let's do this. It's time. Oh. Yes!
Oh, yeah, baby.
Oh, yeah, baby! Yes, we're here. We're back. I just realized I had my studio monitors on very low. Probably didn't get any feedback, though. But welcome to the Podcast Engineering Show. My name's Chris Curran. I produce podcasts for the likes of E+, and Forbes, and Dun & Bradstreet, and some business authors as well. Every week on this show, we bring you podcast production techniques on a silver platter. We talk shop with podcast producers, engineers, and other specialists. I have a background in audio engineering in the music business, and I worked on a bunch of records in New York City at the big studios, and I have album credits and all that cool stuff. And when I entered podcasting about 5.5 years ago, I realized that most people that are doing podcasts, really, it's just like a hobby. They're just like grabbing software, they're doing stuff and editing, and they're just doing a bunch of stuff. And but they don't really have a background in audio engineering, and a lot of times this really cripples the sound right from the beginning. So, of course, Barry's with me. Barry.
Yeah, oh yeah.
That's right. And what else did I want to mention? Oh yeah, podcastengineeringschool.com, where individuals can learn to engineer and produce podcasts at the highest professional level. The highest professional level, not just the professional level. This is serious. Podcast Engineering School is very, very serious. All right. Well, anyway, today my guest is VaShaun Jones. VaShaun, welcome to the show, man.
Hey, man. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so glad you could make it. You're in Georgia. And by the way, you're the host of Delivering Access. That's your show. And you've been producing, you've been podcasting for 5 years. And your website is FedoraOutlier.com. I'm going to put that in the show notes, FedoraOutlier.com. That's your company, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So you're in Georgia, and last night that Hurricane Irma passed over you. Is that true?
Yeah, man. We got some trees down, and so in the background you probably hear some people sawing and moving them out the way, but we're okay, and I was able to turn on the computer and connect with you, so I'm super excited to be here, Chris.
I know. I'm glad you have power and you can connect. And yeah, as we were connecting to do this session, we did hear someone with a chainsaw somewhere, and we're like, oh, man. But that's serious. Anyway, that was a serious storm, and it's cool that we can do this while other people are kind of cleaning up and stuff. Hopefully the damage isn't too bad by you.
Yeah, no, it's not. It's in comparison to what happened in Florida, man, we're good. So yeah, definitely appreciate it.
Yeah. Hey, Barry, you know a little bit about hurricanes, right?
That's a dangerous thing, man.
I'm telling you, it really is. And Barry, what do you think? Do you have any other adjectives about Ralph M. Rivera's show, the podcast show that's called Carbon-Based Business Units? Do you have any other adjectives that come to mind after you listen to that?
Senseless.
Oh, no. Dude, I just dropped 5 new Barry clips. I hope you all are liking this. All right, speed round. Here we go. We're going to talk about your equipment and workflow in a speed round format. So, VaShaun, I want you to tell me, as if you're about to sit down and record an episode, tell me what mic you're speaking into and where the signal's going, and all the way until it's recorded. Yeah, and I know you actually hire out most of your post-production, but just take us through your signal chain.
All right, cool. So it starts with a Mictek CV3, and it ends in Dropbox, and so the points in between is going out of the CV3 into a Aphex master channel voice channel strip, out of there into a PreSonus AR12, and from there into my iMac, and I monitor with a pair of Yamaha HS5s and subwoofers, and we'll record into GarageBand, and I save the project out, copy it, paste it in a Dropbox, and send it on to post-production.
Wow, that's cool. All right, so we're going to get into this because I know you also have a lot of other equipment. You sent me an equipment list, and I was reading it, and I'm like, oh, my God.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy because I love this stuff, but I don't really know exactly what every button does. So every day is like a learning excursion for me. So definitely.
That's good, though. But I'm sure along the way you're learning a lot, and you're, as you learn each individual, piece of knowledge, it definitely stays with you, right? You're building up for sure.
Oh yeah, definitely so. Definitely so. A great love for audio and a great respect for people like yourself that have been engineering for a while. So yeah, definitely.
Cool. So we're going to talk about the signal chain you just mentioned, and we're also going to talk about your other equipment. And then also, along the way, I want you to definitely ask me questions. If you have a question about something, or as you're describing a piece of equipment, if you if you always wondered about it, hey, can I do this with that? Or how do I do this? Definitely ask me, because that'll not only be helpful for you, but it'll be helpful for all of our listeners.
Okay.
So,
gotcha.
All right. So let's start with the, first of all, I heard that you have Yamaha HS5 speakers?
I do.
With a subwoofer.
Yep.
Wow. See, I've never heard. See, the HS5s are like, regular, relatively small speakers, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep. 5 inches. And I'm not a speaker guy, so I can't speak to the other technical aspects of it. But I asked people when I first got started, and I needed a pair of monitors when I didn't know what the word monitor meant, and this is what they recommended. So I figured, I'm going to be listening to music, and might as well get that subwoofer. And so I actually have 2 sets of speakers going into a PreSonus monitoring station. I have a pair of JBL 8s that are up higher, and they're on the wall to my left and right. Right in front of my actual desk is the HS5s, and right under the desk is the subwoofer. And also in front of the desk, I have a sofa, and on each side I have a couple of microphones for any guests that really want to stop past the home studio here. Microphone left is a MXL CR89, a condenser mic that was purchased for a very specific best friend who just sounded good on that mic, and she sometimes just drops through, and I like to just capture her voice. And then to the right of that mic, I have a Shure Beta 58, just kind of a workhorse of microphones, and sounds good on pretty much anything that you put it on. I don't have the vintage RE20, but I do have a RE20 as what was my first quote-unquote professional mic, and I loved it. I still use it. A lot of times I'm doing a lot of remote stuff, so I have a wireless Shure Beta 58, and I have a Sennheiser, I believe that's a EW100 wireless system for a belt pack lapel mic. And for my remote stuff that I do, I'm currently using a Yamaha HS5 2-channel mixer and a MacBook Pro. Still going into GarageBand, still being saved in the Dropbox, and all of that production goes out to a guy that I actually hired to do my post-production stuff that actually works for my company as well, doing technology teaching. So I think that's about it.
Wow.
Oh, no, that's not about it. That's not it. Actually, the RE20 is going into a PreSonus studio channel strip. And then the 2 microphones that I spoke about that are on the left and right side of the sofa is going into a PreSonus BlueTube, which is basically a preamp with a little bit of tube saturation that we can add in, and gain and fades and pads and that type of stuff. And yeah, so I think that's it now.
That's it. All right. Well, so when I asked about your speakers, so we're going to talk about all this stuff, by the way. So when I asked about your speakers and that you have the Yamaha HS5s with the subwoofer, when you hooked up the subwoofer, so one thing about monitoring is that especially with subwoofers, I think you have to be. I've never had monitors with a subwoofer, but I know you have to be very careful about the subwoofer because the subwoofer can sort of add all this low end, so you can actually be tricked into thinking that, ooh, my mix has all this low end, and wow, isn't this fat and all that. But then you'll listen back on other speakers, and it'll sound really thin and horrible. So,
Right.
What was your process of setting up the subwoofer and sort of adjusting the level of the subwoofer so that you actually know what you're hearing and that you can do good mixes?
So I actually, like I said, use the PreSonus monitoring station, and it has the ability to connect 3 sets of speakers. So in my case, the JBL8s, the HS5s, and then the subwoofer. So I just minus out the subwoofer and just listen to the HS5s, and then when I need to bring it in as if it's a complete mix, then I'll enable all 3. So that's pretty much how I do it. I just got the subwoofer because I knew I wanted to also listen to music as well.
Yeah, and a sub is really good for checking the low end of certain mixes. I mean, look, in podcasting, there's really not a lot going on in the sub frequency range, like from the let's say 20 to 50 hertz range.
Right.
I mean, there's some, there are frequencies in the human voice that go that low, but they're just not very loud. However, in music, especially in, hip hop and R&B and all that, there's a lot of low end, a lot of the sub bass frequencies. So that's good to check. A lot of mixers do that. They'll have, obviously the reason you have different speakers is so you can hear it on different speakers, because each speaker has its own character and own feedback. Like your JBL 8s, I'm sure they have more low end than your HS5s,
and they do
out of the box, because it's a bigger speaker. And actually the Yamaha HS5s and a lot of the Yamaha near fields are known to not have a lot of bass. So which is fine, because you're not, you don't need it for mixing technically. But yeah, so that's interesting. So that's pretty cool. So then you just kind of turn it on and to listen and check the low end, which it can be really helpful. I mean, that's what we used to do when we were mixing records in New York, is like you can mix on the small near field monitors for a while, but especially if it's, rap or hip hop or R&B, you have to put it up on the big speakers and turn it up, because you have to feel how it thumps, and it's more of a feeling than a hearing thing at that point.
Yep.
Right?
Yep, absolutely.
So there's that fullness in the sub frequencies. But again, in podcasting, it doesn't really apply. Well, unless you have, unless your theme song is a hip hop song.
There you go.
Then you're going to have these frequencies thumping, and then you're going to come in with your voice. So that would be a really good example of how your subwoofer could help you mix episodes like that. Because you have to make sure when your voice comes in that it's not like there's not all this super low end rumble, like messing up the clarity of your voice. So it's good. I'm glad you have that.
Yep.
And you have a couch there where you have these 2 other mics, so you have some people come in at times and record with you, right?
That was the goal. I finally ordered my last piece of equipment I think that I'm going to need or want, which is a X-Touch control surface. And so my goal is to have other individuals come in and kind of do a 3-person show, and maybe have people piped in via Skype. And I'll have that first show this upcoming Saturday. So I think we're almost there.
Oh, that's cool. So yeah, so if you're having 3 people in person, that's one thing, because you can obviously run all the 3 mics into, your MacBook Pro or your iMac, sorry, and then record all 3 mics. But that's pretty easy because everyone's local, and at that point you don't even really need headphones if you didn't want to. Although if you're going to play any music or clips, then you would need headphones.
Yeah. And then the people that are on Skype. So each one of the, I guess I would call them stations, have a pair of your typical $200 Sony headphones. I don't know the model number, and I have the little headphone holder. So
oh wow,
it's pretty neat. So yeah, they sit down. I can adjust their levels in their headphone from the monitoring station, and they can hear everything that I'm hearing.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, so if you have someone on Skype, then definitely everyone needs headphones, and that's so cool that you have these little stations set up.
Yeah.
Wow. So you should definitely take a picture or two.
Okay,
on Saturday.
gotcha.
Yeah, with
Sure.
your guests, or have someone just invite like another person to come and just take pictures.
Come
take
and
video.
take the pictures out. We'll make that happen for sure.
Yeah, because that's pretty cool, man. If you got a really cool setup, like people love online, especially seeing that, like especially with links like Instagram, and it's well known for forever that when you post on social media with a picture, you get a lot more action out of it if it's just text.
Definitely so.
So all right, so the Mictek CV3, that's the mic you're using today. So Mictek, I can't remember. There's a very more popular podcasting mic that they make, Mictek. I can't remember what it is, but it's also a condenser, which is why it's usually not the best choice for a podcast microphone, because the condensers pick up so much background noise.
Everything. Yeah.
But you have a CV3. Now, is it a handheld mic, or is it like a vocal mic that's on a shock mount kind of thing?
Yeah, it's a vocal mount that I have on the shock mount. It's like the little brother to the CV4. I know they have the C7, C1, C5. I wanted this particular mic because I've never experienced having a tube mic and what that was like. And out of the ones that I looked at and listened to and heard the reviews on, I really like the Mictek, and it's hard to purchase and then send back. I kind of feel kind of guilty. So when I ordered it, I tested it and I liked it. I liked my voice on it. And I said I would use a channel strip to kind of modify my voice in the different ranges that I maybe didn't like or wanted to enhance. So yeah, definitely the Mictek CV3 is a great mic for me.
Yeah, I just pulled it up on my computer here, and man, it is a nice-looking large diaphragm condenser, and it's a tube condenser, which is cool, and it also has 9 patterns.
Yeah, and that was my favorite feature, to be able to get some versatility on the different patterns. I know we could have did, Omni, Uni, and Bi, but I was thinking that the in-between, based on my setup and the acoustics in the room, that I would be able to change to a pattern that would work well and block out some of the sound from behind and still be able to use it. So yeah, definitely.
Right? Oh yeah, that was your little assistant, right, talking to you?
Yeah, I'm blind, so I got all types of talking stuff and things going on. Not like Barry, but
Oh man. Barry, what is VaShaun gonna need to really get the most out of his Mictek CV3 microphone?
You're gonna need a couple of horses or a couple of mules.
Anything else?
And a cow.
Saws, hammers, nails, monkeys, pumas. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I got 2 out of the 3 of those things, though, but, so we're almost there.
Right? I know it's right after the Irma storm, but maybe you can go out and get some saws and nails and hammers.
Right. We'll put it in post-production.
So 9 patterns. It doesn't say on the webpage what all the 9 patterns are, but anyway, that's very interesting. It looks like a great. What's the cost of that mic?
I believe it was $1,200.
Something like $1,200. Okay, yeah. So that's
and
a
I was
serious
looking,
mic.
Yeah, I was looking at the Norman U87, of course, and then I was also looking at Norman has a dynamic mic that I wanted to try out, and it would be special order, and I didn't feel like waiting, and so I settled on this particular one, and I like it. I think it's pretty cool.
Yeah, I'm just looking up the Aphex master channel. I want to see a picture of it. So let's talk about that. It's a channel strip. So the Aphex master channel, I think, does Dave Jackson have an Aphex master channel?
I heard, and let me tell you this, man. You are the only podcast I've listened from episode 1.
Wow.
When you actually said episode all the way to session 61, man. So I've learned a lot. So I don't know the guy, but I do know, I heard one of your guests say that he uses it, and I'm like, yes, I'm on the right track. Somebody uses something that I have. So yeah, absolutely.
Barry, what do you think of me calling these recordings sessions, but then always messing up and calling it episodes? And then I just recently thought maybe I should call them episessions, which is stupid. What do you think of that whole fiasco?
Senseless.
Oh, you know. All right, so the Aphex Master Channel. Actually, I remember now. We had a guest who was using it, and I think there's a button on here called the phase, where it'll actually phase correct the signal going through it. But really, it's a microphone preamp. It's a one rack space unit, and it's got the preamp. It's got EQ and a compressor, and it must have a gate as well, right?
Yep. De-esser, big bottom, oral exciter.
Yes.
Yeah.
I just bought the
Parametric
vintage
EQ.
The vintage oral exciter plugin. I bought that from, I think, Waves. That's pretty cool.
That was one of the questions that I wanted to ask you, and you can answer it whenever.
Yeah.
But what do you think about the plugins and the modern way, quote unquote, of recording versus a lot of the outboard gear and doing it that way?
Yeah. Well, nothing can ever replace a good microphone with a good mic preamp going into a good audio interface, and being recorded well. So recording things well is like the number one rule of audio engineering. One of the things recently I've been watching some of these videos on YouTube called Mix with the Masters.
Me too. And
it's awesome because they're in the studio, they're mixing, they're teaching, and even Andy Wallace, someone who I know sort of. I do know him, but it's been 20 years. And he's one of the just greatest mix engineers of all time. And you know what it comes down to? Because who was it? Was it Eddie Kramer? Yeah, someone was talking about how Eddie Kramer mixes and that he hardly uses any outboard gear. He just uses the the compressor and the EQ on the SSL, and he that's how he gets such a great sound. And it's like, yeah, he can do that because the tracks that he's working with have been recorded perfectly. So when you record, you need to record things the best possible quality you can. That's why a lot of, in music, a lot of engineers are crazy. They'll go out and they'll change the snare drum mic 7 times. They'll be nope, doesn't sound right. Go change the mic. Try another mic. Try another one. They'll literally change. I mean, they'll go like days just changing mics until they find a good mic for each drum and for guitar. And the reason is because each mic is different. And if you record it properly, the mixing is easy. And then the mixing, then you can make it truly amazing in the mix, not just good. So as far as your question, as far as plugins and doing things, in the box versus hardware, like I said initially, nothing will ever replace a good signal chain in the recording process. So everything you have and everything you bought is you need it, you love it, it's great quality. That's always going to be necessary. Now, when you get into the mixing process, then you have the option to, use some plugins. And so definitely a lot of these newer plugins are modeled off of vintage gear, and they're modeled very well. Meaning they go through, it takes a long time to model a vintage piece of gear. What they do is they actually take a vintage piece of gear and they spend, I don't know how many hours, probably hundreds of hours, putting audio through that piece of gear and adjusting the dials and seeing and sort of mapping what effect each dial has, what button has. And it's like they spend like a zillion hours. And so That way, when you use the plugin, you're actually getting almost the same exact sound as the vintage piece of gear. So in terms of mixing and like post-production, yeah, it definitely is worth it to buy some good plugins, and because you can kind of get, you know, the fat analog sound, you can get the clarity, you can get, you know, have nice de-essers and noise reduction. And I mean, you can do a lot in there that, I mean, for the most part, well, especially noise reduction, I mean, hardware can't do that, right? So
right.
So so anyway, it's I guess the answer is both. Is that a one-word answer?
The long and the short is.
Jeez.
All right,
and Barry, what do you have to say about this answer?
And scientific report from California was saying the same thing.
Scientific report from California said the same thing, actually, yes. All right, so we were talking about the Aphex Master Channel, which is a nice unit. That's a $1,000 unit itself. See, that's no joke right there. You got a nice unit.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
Yeah. Then you got the PreSonus AR12 interface. Now, how many XLR inputs does that have?
That has 8. I'm using the line in from each one of the preamps, so just using 1/4 inch out into line in. But yeah, it has 8 XLRs.
Okay, right. So what you're doing is your mic is going into the Aphex channel strip, and that's where the mic pre is. So when you come out of the Aphex and go into your interface, that signal is actually at line level, so you don't need to boost the preamp on the PreSonus AR12, because then you'd be preamping it twice, which is not good.
Yeah.
Although we did, before we started here, just to boost your level a bit, I think you did just boost that level a hair. So
yep,
little things, you know, tweaking knobs a little bit, it can never hurt, as long as it sounds good. Obviously, you have to use your ear for everything.
There you go.
All right, so you got the iMac, and what software were you running again? Did you say?
GarageBand.
GarageBand. Okay, so yeah, GarageBand apparently, well, especially for recording, it's fine, because a lot of when you're actually capturing audio and recording audio, pretty much your interface and the computer itself determines first of all, the resolution of the audio that you're recording. And all the equipment leading up to that determines the quality of the sound. So in a way, it doesn't really matter if you recorded with GarageBand or Pro Tools or Adobe Audition or Reaper. So it's still going to end up with the same WAV file or whatever file Apple does. What is it? AIFF is the file?
Yeah, you can do WAV.
You can.
For me, I just export it as a GarageBand project and let them open it up, say in Logic, or I'm sure they're in Logic. So in Logic, and do all the edits from there. Right.
Yeah, so you're recording into GarageBand and just sort of handing it over. But yeah, so if you were to do mixing and plugins, like I don't know if GarageBand can do plugins, but that's probably why your editor or your post-production guy, he probably, like you said, Logic, he probably uses something like that, because then he can open up plugins and he can do all kinds of cool stuff. So yeah, so recording into GarageBand is no problem if you're just recording. If you ever were to do post-production yourself, then you might want to use a different program.
Yeah. I'm probably move over to Logic. Being blind, it's super accessible, and it's just going to mirror the basic stuff that I already know on GarageBand, and then enhance what I don't know, in a bigger, more expandable DAW. So yeah, it's gonna be great. When I get the X Touch, then I'll start moving more into post production, and just seeing what I can create.
Okay, you brought up the X Touch. Let's talk about that. What actually does the X Touch do?
So it's a control surface, and for me, not having to use so many mouths as far as keystrokes in my DAW or attempting to try to use the mouse, I can control a lot of the digital audio workstation parameters just from the control surface. So I'm just using that as a workflow enhancer, and I know I'm gonna get into it anyway, so I might as well. I like buttons, physical buttons,
Right.
and that'll give me a better sense of what's going on. The only thing, it's 99 of them to have to remember, so good luck to me on that.
Really? Well, how are they set up? Like 10
they're in
10 rows of
banks.
10 or something?
Yeah, I don't know because I haven't seen it. It'll be here tomorrow, but I know it has 9 faders, and each fader has the pause, play, record, and the this and the that. And, then it has little router buttons and stuff to put stuff everywhere. So
right, it probably has at least a couple dials above each fader that you can sort of map to different things in the computer.
Yeah.
So yeah, you'll probably have to do some mapping when you get it, right? Because to kind of set it up.
Yep.
But that's pretty cool because control surfaces are wonderful. I mean, if they can be so handy. I haven't actually ever bought one, and I've only played around with them very briefly, like in probably Guitar Center or something.
Right.
But they, the one I see on Facebook all the time is, I forget what it's called, Raven or something. It's like it's just like 2 big screens. And
the all digital interface.
It's all digital. It's like you open your DAW, you can like zoom in and like adjust your plugins, and I mean it's crazy. It looks so cool. But I know what you're saying about having knobs to twist because, well, for you that's really helpful, but for everyone it's helpful. That feeling of twisting a knob it's just a different experience than using your mouse and dragging your mouse a half an inch or something.
Yeah, exactly.
So, all right, well, you got your MXL CR89. That's the microphone you got for your best friend when she comes in. Is that also a condenser?
Yeah, that's a condenser as well. I know what you're going to say. I was going to say, man, you must get a lot of outside sounds.
Oh, no. Look, I mean, well, let me ask you this. I see it right here. Low noise condenser microphone. Cool. So in your studio space, have you done any, acoustic treatments? Have you deadened things? Do you have foam or anything around? Do you have carpet?
Yeah, so I have hardwood floors. Even when I knew this was a studio but didn't know anything about creating a studio, I'm thinking hardwood floors would be cool. So when we redid the house, I put hardwood floors here, which I wish I would have did carpet. But as I started to add more stuff to the room, like the sofa, I noticed that the room would start to sound better. And then I went out and got acoustic treatment. So I got a couple of panels behind me to deaden the noise coming from them sitting facing me on the sofa. I have a couple of panels beside them, panels on the side. Now, right in front of my window, which is where a lot of the noise comes in from, I have a couple of panels there. But it seems not to be doing the trick, so I don't know whether I need to do something with the windows or what. But, yeah, I do have acoustic treatment placed around the room.
Yeah, I mean, as soon as you said you had hardwood floors, I was like, really? Because I can't. Yeah, and then you explained how you treated the room a little bit. So yeah, the treatment you've done is working. So your voice is very clear. I mean, I think if I crank you up in my headphones, I can hear a little bit of room reverb. But that's actually sometimes a little bit of reverb is actually good.
Yeah.
It actually is. So. And this is something I've tested. Well, I've probably tested it in many ways over the years, but even when I mix now, even when I mix episodes, sometimes I will actually introduce a very slight amount of reverb to certain voices because it just, it's not even that you hear it, but it's like it somehow adds a little depth. And somehow when I just watched this YouTube video the other day, it was about Idaho. It was about how beautiful Idaho is, and it was it was like an hour-long documentary about Idaho. It was just the most amazing thing ever. Like I definitely I need to go to Idaho. That's all I know.
All right,
but but the voiceover guy and there was probably like 3 or 4 people throughout the documentary who were like on camera and speaking. All of their voices had like a lot of like small room reverb on them. And when and when this documentary started playing, I really thought that like there was something wrong with my audio, like something wrong, like, you know how sometimes I can't think of where this happens, but sometimes when you play back a video, like sometimes it'll play back twice, but it'll be a slight delay. And it'll just sound weird, like there's an echo or something for like a little bit. As soon as this video about Idaho came on, I was like, wow, like is it feeding back? Is it playing twice? Like why does his voice sound like that? Because usually the voiceover guy is just literally raw, right? There's no effects at all in terms of reverb. I mean, of course, EQ and compression, but no reverb or delay or anything like that, or chorus. So I was like, really? And so I was like, literally for a few minutes, I was fascinated with this video. I'm like, really? They made a whole documentary where they put like a bunch of like reverb on these people. It sounded like they were it reminded me of the old PCM 70 tiled room setting. Like it kind of sounded like a bathroom.
Right. It's funny, listening to your show and getting more into audio and audio production and gear and all that. I'm like you when you mentioned on one of your show when you turn it on and it's bad audio, a podcast, it just isn't leveled right or just is horrible audio. I just immediately skip or go to the next one because it's it's just something you get used to something great and you just don't want to go back.
That's called the death spiral of buying hardware and plugins, my friend.
Oh man, see, I haven't even went down the plug-in path. So,
dude, wait till you hit that road. I have a problem. Yeah. I have the alumni from the podcast engineering school from this past spring. They're planning an intervention for me, a plug-in intervention.
Right.
They want to sit down and talk to me. Right. Barry, what do you think about my habit of buying plugins?
Senseless.
Dude. Really, it's not senseless. What do you really think of it, Barry?
Oh man, wow.
You got to play those in the right spot, though. That's hard,
man.
That's the hard thing about Barry.
Yeah,
Barry,
he's a good guy, though.
Barry, do you think I do a good job of playing clips of you on the show?
I don't think so.
Dude. All right. Well, look. Anyway, yeah. So your wireless system, your Sennheiser EW100. I think I also have something along the same. I think I also have. I don't know if it's a beta. Wait, you said it's a Sennheiser. Yeah, I might have the handheld version of this, but you have the lav version. So how are you using your wireless lav?
So generally I'm like demoing a product and I'm, remote and I need to have hands free. So I'm just kind of clipping it onto my belt and kind of doing interviews. I don't know whether that's a condenser mic on that. I believe it is because it picks up everything. But it's mainly when I need to be hands free. The Shure Beta 58 is a handheld wireless mic, and I'm usually giving that to the another person that I'm interviewing when I need to ensure that I don't need any wires and doing that interview.
See, that's good. You give the guest the wireless Beta 58, and then you're wearing your own lav.
Yeah.
Now, the thing about the lav, it probably is a condenser because as a bunch of sessions ago when I talked with Michael Pedersen, we were talking about lav mics and the difference between condensers and cardioid, right? Like directional lavs. And he was saying how the cardioid lavs, the directional lavs are very tricky because a lot of times they can twist or turn and then they pick up the wrong audio and it's just a pain. And he says he said they're more prone to like the rustling, the sound and different things. But that's why he said they usually use condensers because it avoids a lot of those problems. But yeah, condensers will pick up everything. And here's the thing with lavs. You can only, if you're clipping it to your chest, you can only get it so close to your mouth. I mean, you can't clip it to your chin. Although that'd be a funny picture to see of someone
Right,
with a lav mic like duct taped to their chin.
Lav mic, yeah, absolutely.
Dude, now Ralph M. Rivera, you have to make a picture of that for me. Thank you. All right. Anyway, but the thing is with the labs, they're not really close to your mouth, so you end up picking up a lot of other noise, and I mean, really, what are you gonna do about it? Nothing. So,
yeah.
The only other thing you can do is wear like a headset mic, like the sportscasters wear on the side of like a basketball court. They have like
that is true.
They have like the headphones in with the little arm that comes off and right in front of their mouth with a foam pop filter on it, and that is definitely directional. That's definitely cardioid, pointing right at their mouth, and that would pick up a lot less noise. In fact, that's what Ralph M. Rivera and his lovely wife Carolyn Rivera, that's what they bought to do their remote stuff.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, does that lead from the headset into XLR connection, or does that screw into a wireless set? How is that?
So I think the one they have, it's like a $200 model, and the quality's very good, and it is wired. So there are, I think there is an XLR output, and there's also maybe a 1/4 inch input, right? Because you have to feed sound to the headphones.
Got you.
From the mixer or wherever you're feeding it from. So it has an output and an input, and maybe another cable. I don't know, but yeah, it's cabled. So they probably make wireless versions of those.
I'm sure.
I've never looked into that. But that's interesting.
Okay.
But that might be a lot more money. I mean,
I'm sure. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, that's the thing. Geez.
Yeah.
All right. So the Yamaha AG6.
06, yeah.
AG06. That's a mixer?
Mm-hmm. Yep. A little small 2-channel mixer. It's actually what I started on as far as mixers. And the reason why I like it has a loopback feature on it that is just the press of a button. And it allows me, when I'm doing teaching sessions remotely, I'm able to loop in my speech software to the actual person that's listening on the other end. And that was one of the reasons for initially choosing that mixer. And, it was just me and I didn't know anything. So that $200 was well spent. And now when I'm on the road, I just take that with me and, use it to record.
Nice. So how do you plug in your speech assistant? Well, what is that speech assistant? Is that like from your smartphone?
Computer, so USB. Yeah, I have it on any device, my Apple Watch. All of Apple's products have the voiceover feature, but in that instance, I'm using the speech output from my Mac via USB and back into the mixer so that the people on Skype is able to hear it.
Okay. Oh, that's pretty cool. What kind of teaching do you do?
So at Fedora, we teach people across the globe that are visually impaired or disabled how to use technology. So all of Apple's products, Windows, Android, things of that nature, so that they can, what I like to say, find or create work that's meaningful, purposeful, and profitable. So podcasting and podcast engineering is one of those great fields, and so that's something that I eventually want to get into teaching, so that people with disabilities can make a significant amount of income and change their life and their family tree.
That's so cool. And you've actually interviewed Garth Humphreys, who was on this show a while back.
I did. That's I've always heard the name, just like Kevin Worley.
Oh.
And I'm like, I wonder are these the same people? And so I reached out to Garth. We did an interview. I've been knowing Kevin for years. And so, yeah, I've been interviewing blind people for 5 years. And I've recently gotten into reaching out to millionaires and, just people who have done amazing things in their life. But Garth was a great interview, and he understood my audio production pains. So yeah, it's pretty good.
That's awesome. Garth is a great guy, and he still has the best company name ever.
Audio Pizza.
Audio Pizza. I mean, seriously, done. You're done. You never.
Man,
every other company.
I told him, and he doesn't get it. He's like, no, I'm going back to, and I'm like, man, Audio Pizza is the best,
dude. That's it. Everyone else in the world now, they should just number their companies, because you just don't even bother naming it after that.
Right.
Audio Pizza.
Man, that's crazy.
Tremendous. All right, the PreSonus Blue 2. That's so you have the two mics. So you have a couch there, and you have these two mics for guests. And you said these two mics are going into the PreSonus Blue 2. Is that an audio interface?
That's a just a dual preamp.
Okay.
So it has the tube saturation that you can turn on, the gain, phase, pad, and phantom power.
Okay.
And it's just two of them.
Got it. And you plug the two mics into the PreSonus Blue 2. Then you come out of there and you go into your main PreSonus AR12.
Yep.
Got it. Yep. So the AR12 is your main interface, which that's what GarageBand is recording.
Correct.
Yep. Perfect. Yep. All right. So do you have any questions about your setup right now? So the way you're doing things currently, what is anything bothering you? Does anything feel like it's really not efficient?
Okay, so I'm trying to understand PFL, AFL from the standpoint of, like, even when we were testing my microphone and turning up the levels, I would turn up the fader. I would push up the fader. I can hear it getting louder in my ear, but you didn't hear any change. So how is that so, and why is that so?
All right, well, I can explain what AFL and PFL are, but first I want to just tell you, the listener, that for about 10 minutes now, VaShaun and I just were looking at his PreSonus AR12. And by the way, it's not just an interface, it's actually a mixer. It's a mixer and an interface. It's one of these new USB mixers, and which admittedly I don't have really any experience with. And you got to be careful with these new USB mixers, which are a mixer and interface combined, because the way that each manufacturer controls the signal flow, and then the way that interacts with software in your computer, it's like different from mixer to mixer. So it's hard to just say, like, me just glancing at a picture of this PreSonus AR12, it's hard for me to say what's happening. Why when I move this fader, I can't hear it, or I can hear it, but you can't hear it. So stuff like that, I would have to get involved in the, get involved with the settings and the manual with regards to this mixer to understand the signal flow, where it's taking the signal from, how it's recording, how you're monitoring. There's a lot to that. So certainly, VaShaun, if you go on YouTube, there's some YouTube videos of people explaining how to record separate channels and how to monitor on this mixer. But the AFL and PFL, I will comment on, because that does appear on some mixers, and really it's a different way to solo different channels. So, for instance, you're on channel 1 of your mixer, and on channel 1, there's a PFL button right near the fader. PFL stands for pre-fader listen. So when you click PFL, you're going to listen to the signal pre-fader. Okay? Now, AFL means after fader listen. So when you click AFL, which appears on your mixer in the master section on these two, on monitor 1 and monitor 2, like, they look like subgroup faders, but it's that's what I'm a little confused about. They're kind of like master faders for the aux end, which I don't right off the bat, I don't get, why you would need that. I'm sure there's a good reason, and I'm sure I just don't get it. But anyway, those two faders, they have AFL. So when you click when you press AFL, it's after fader listen. So it's just a different way to listen to solo something. And sometimes you want to hear it before the fader. Sometimes you want to hear it after the fader. There's more to it, but especially for podcasting, yeah, I think that's enough. So, and I would suggest just play around with it. I mean, now that you know what they mean and now you know what they do, it's just soloing. It's just, if you want to hear your track only, you can click the PFL button on your channel and it will actually mute all the other channels. And it'll only play your channel so you can hear yourself. Again, you don't always need to use this, especially in podcasting, if you only have 2 or 3 mics, 2 or 3 people, and you can hear everybody. And if there's a big noise coming from somewhere, you kind of know where it's coming from, which track it's coming from, right? Like if someone's on Skype and you hear all kinds of crazy noise, it's them on Skype. So you don't have to solo it to find out. And soloing is really helpful in music, obviously, when you have like 15 microphones on a drum set and you just want to hear the kick drum mic. So you'll just press solo on the kick drum, and then that'll let you hear the kick drum, and then you can set your EQ for the kick drum, and then you can unsolo it, and then you'll hear all the drum mics. So soloing in podcasting is not something you probably even need to mess with, but anyway, that's what AFL and PFL are. And as far as what you're hearing and what's being recorded from that mixer, definitely go to YouTube and look it up, because again, the routing on these USB mixers is different for every mixer. I mean, you have 8 XLR inputs on your mixer, but I'm wondering how many individual tracks that can record on your DAW. Will it record all 8 channels individually in GarageBand for you? That's a question. The answer should be yes, because that just makes logical sense. Like, why would you ever buy a mixer? Some of these USB mixers, they will mix down all these 8 microphones
into one track,
into a stereo pair.
Yep.
And it's like, for professional audio, that does me no good. For amateur stuff, let's just plug stuff in and screw around. Fine, who cares? But so anyway, you can find out on this mixer how it does it, and someone listening might know. So if you listen, you can just comment on this post on podcastengineeringschool.com.
Yeah. So it'll do the different tracks. And so I didn't necessarily have a question other than that as far as gear, but I wanted to know more about your RE20 and the vintage part. What are you noticing as being the difference? And then the Portico 2 by Neve, do you find that as being, I know it's overkill for a podcast, but I mean, you chose it and had it for a reason. Do you find that gives you better clarity, or what does these 2 items give you as far as, quality and such?
Yeah. Okay, so first the RE20, yes, I'm using a vintage one, which I think after a certain year, they changed the way that they're making these RE20s. And I don't know what year that is. Mark Johansson, if you're listening, he knows what year it was. I think it was maybe even late 80s. They changed it. And the difference between a so-called vintage RE20 and a new RE20 is very slight. It is very slight. In fact, some people might not even be able to hear the difference. But there seems to be, in the mid-range or even the high mids, there seems to be a little more clarity in the vintage one. But it's slight. It really is slight. So, is it worth hunting down a vintage RE20 and all that? I don't know. I mean, if you're a crazy gear person, then maybe you'd want to do that. But, I think a newer RE20 is 99.8% as good as a vintage one, so it's probably not worth getting nutty over. So regarding my Neve Portico 2, which is my channel strip, yeah, it's definitely overkill. I think the price is like, I don't know what, $3,000 or $3,500 or something. And I used to use I mean, obviously the mic preamp in it is just amazing. And it also has, you know, filters and EQ and compression. And I used to use all of it. I used to, you know, roll off some low end. I used to use some EQ, and I used to use compression. And I even used to use, there's a little knob on there called silk mode. And it's two different silk modes. One is like more for low end, one's more for high end. It's kind of like, well, the people at Neve might get upset if I say this, but it's kind of like the Aphex, the Oral Exciter, and the Big Bottom.
Right.
And I say kind of like, it's not exactly like. It's just something where they're adding either lower frequency harmonics or higher frequency harmonics, which is sort of the same as an exciter. So, but I'm sure Neve does it their own way. Anyway, I love the whole silk idea, and I used it. I used the low frequency one for a while, then I changed to the high frequency one. Now I'm actually at the point where the only thing I use on this Portico 2 is, well, obviously the mic pre, because I'm plugging into the mic pre. But I use a little bit of compression now. That's all I use. I don't use the silk. I don't even use the EQ on this thing, because I did a lot of testing, and you know, I kind of, again, for broadcasting and podcasting, recording a nice clean raw sound that has the good dynamics and a good, you know, just more. The more raw you can record something, the more pure it is. So it's not always good to just EQ something because you have an EQ available. So sometimes it makes more sense, and wisdom says if you don't need it, and if it's not really adding anything, then just don't use it. So that's the thing with my Portico 2 is I'm only using the compressor on it now, and I'm sort of I'm compressing lighter than I used to do as well. So I'm actually processing it less through there. And the other thing I've found with the Portico 2 is that it's very musical. So for a voice, for a radio host or a podcast host, it's probably not the best channel strip you could get. I think if you had it in a studio and you could use it when you're mixing, and you could run a vocal through there, or you could run a guitar or something through there, I think it would be way more useful. And this is only in the last like 6 or 12 months that I'm realizing this. And I almost, you know, and I got to be careful because I almost want to go out and buy another channel strip, but I'm not going to.
Or plug in.
Yeah, I'm not going to. But you know, there's a bunch of vintage gear I'd like to buy, and you know, if I win the lottery, I'll be buying a bunch of stuff, and I'll have a cool studio. But besides that, I'm not really going to do anything. So it's a really good unit. The mic pre is great. Everything about it is great. I love it. And so does it make my sound great? I mean, yeah, my sound is pretty good. It's not the best. Yeah. You know, I don't know. It's definitely not the best.
But you got the best gear. See?
Well, but the thing is, like every single session, I'm tweaking the sound of my mic and my setup. You would think after how many episodes I've done of different podcasts?
61 so far posted.
Well, that's this show. I've done a lot of other shows too. After all this, you would think I have my settings dialed in and I don't have to worry about it anymore. But I actually don't. I keep tweaking it because I want it to keep tweaking it, get it better. A little better on the Portico 2 on the way in. And then once I'm in there, I'm getting plugins, and I'm always experimenting with new plugins. That's the main area that I'm actually always experimenting is with plugins. I'm not changing my Portico 2 every session for sure. Maybe every 20 sessions I'll be like, I'm gonna I'll spend 3 hours just re-compressing and re-EQing, and I'll just do a whole sound check and try to make my sound better. But that's only like every 15, 20 sessions that I do that. So, but I'm always tweaking, and I think that's good because it's good. So my voice doesn't sound the best. This show doesn't sound the best. I mean, it sounds okay. It sounds good. It definitely sounds really good. I'll say that about the way I'm producing this. I know that, but is it the best? No. And will I ever be the best? No. So, and I don't care because as long as it's very good, and you know, this show's to help people anyway. So,
Got you.
So it's all good.
All right.
But VaShaun, this has been awesome, man. We're out of time.
All right.
We got to run, but folks can hear your podcast, Delivering Access, and visit your website at FedoraOutlier.com. All the links to the link to your show and your company will be on the show notes for this on podcastengineeringschool.com. And VaShaun, I already know you're going to be buying some new gear and some new plugins and all this. And so hopefully sometime in the future, like maybe, 6, 9, or 12 months from now, maybe we can hang out again and see how you have
progressed or digressed.
Yeah.
There you
go. No way. Hey,
sure thing, Chris.
Hey, and Barry's here too. Barry, what do you think? You think VaShaun, he's gonna buy a bunch of stuff, right?
That's frightening.
Oh yeah. Oh man. All right. Anyway, I don't like to end on that note. That wasn't the funniest Barry clip I've ever played. The question. That's why the question is so important with Barry, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
See, VaShaun, you can't even touch it. No one can.
Hey, there you go.
All right. Well, thanks. Why did that stop playing?
Sir.
All right. Anyway, VaShaun, thanks again, man. I've had a real pleasure speaking with you. I love what you're doing. You're doing great, man. You're literally kicking butt. And I love the way your sound is. I love your signal flow, and keep improving. And we'll talk again soon, brother.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, check out podcastengineeringschool.com for all the sessions of the show. And as always, VaShaun, sound great.
Sound great.
Yeah.
Walk away from me where and you can't play that part so well. Why do you play it out on me now? You like to lose control where it's quite a feeling, isn't it? They're floating, drifting down now. You tell me that you found something better. How should I respond to that? It's a lie. I don't wanna hear it. What do you want me to say? It's a lie. I don't wanna hear it. You react some angry. You change your attitude where you say I just don't get it now. You say your eyes so far away now. Give up on me where some change your game and give away. Say I wouldn't understand now. You tell me that you found something better. How should I respond to that? Oh yeah, I say now it's a lie. I don't wanna hear it. What do you want me to say? Doesn't seem that long a time now. Think we did still hold that meaning. It doesn't mean it's still the same. You're pushing me away. The work your theories now where you're getting worked up on you now. You work your way around somehow now. Yes, it hurts me now where that you don't talk to me enough. Now that these words have slid apart now. You tell me that you found something better. How should I respond to that? Oh yeah, I say now it's a lie. I don't wanna hear it. What do you want me to say? It's a lie. I don't wanna hear it. Do you reject some angry?
First, I have a question for Barry here. Barry, you know our good friend Ralph M. Rivera, right? Yeah. Barry's here. He's sitting across from me. He just nodded his head.
Okay.
You know, Barry, you know that people can't hear your nodded head, right? You know you have to talk, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Okay, good. So, Barry, you've heard Ralph M. Rivera's show called Carbon-Based Business Units. You actually just heard your first episode. You were telling me. What did you think about that?
Yeah. Oh, wow. Forget it. Awful.
Oh, no. Oh, really?
Oh, man. Wow.
Really? I got one more. Hold on.
Wow, man. Wow.
That's my favorite one at the end. He's like,
Right.
wow.
Wow, man. Wow.
All right. Well, there you go.